All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for coming. So this is part of the Diversity Committee's Community Engagement series of talks. My name is Ryan Hubbard. I'm the co-chair of the Diversity Committee here at Gulf Coast State College. So today we're going to be talking about student homelessness, and we have representatives from the PATHS program of the Bay County District Schools, and we'll also be talking about domestic violence issues. We have a representative from the Salvation Army's domestic violence program. I'm going to go ahead and let you all introduce yourselves, and then you can talk about what you do.
My name is Sean Wilder. I'm with the Salvation Army Domestic Violence Program. I am the program manager.
My name is Sue Bowen.
My name is David Weldy, and we work with the Bay District Schools Homeless Department program, and specifically, Sue and I work with the unaccompanied students who aren't with a parent or legal guardian.
And Lucy McLean, I'm a social worker with the PATHS team.
All right, well, we'd like to start with the PATHS program. If you'd like to talk about what your program does and maybe some facts and figures about homelessness in Bay County.
Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, well, first of all, no one knows what PATHS stands for most of the time, so it stands for Providing Assistance to Homeless Students. And our whole department is involved with homeless families to some degree or another. Now, there's a lot of criteria that goes into marking someone or designating someone as being homeless. So one of the most common forms of homelessness is being doubled up. You know, in our minds, a lot of times we think about, well, they're homeless. That doesn't necessarily mean that someone has absolutely no place to sleep, that they're out on the street. But for our purposes, it's lacking a fixed and regular nighttime residence. And so our families are sometimes in hotels, motels. They're living in their cars. They're living in tents, sheds. You know, what else? Doubled up is like I said, doubled up is the most common one. That's where they're living with another family or with some other, you know, another residence that's not their own, with someone that has taken them in. Of that group, Sue and I work with the kids who are unaccompanied, meaning that they're not with a parent or legal guardian. So that's a whole nother group that we work with, and a lot of those are couch surfing from place to place. It's a very transitional living situation, so we come in and meet with the kids when we get the referrals. We try to see what they need. There's a wide range of services that we offer. So typically for Sue and I, we often help them to get signed up for food stamps and Medicaid, if that's something they need. We get them clothes and shoes. If a parent has passed, then we try to help them to see if they're eligible for death benefits. We can help them to get a birth certificate so they can get an ID, so they can get a job. We have vans we can transport to medical appointments. What else? Anything else you're thinking of?
Well, the other thing we're doing this year is recapturing the kids who dropped out. So we've got seniors who drop out the second half of their senior year. And we've got kids who dropped out because they have to work. So part of what we're doing this year is recapturing them and getting them graduated. I've got 6 that are coming to Gulf Coast on Friday to try to get enrolled because they never thought they'd go anywhere. They never thought college was an option, and they did not have a future story that they could say, this is where I'm going to go and what I want to do. Because they still don't know what they want to do, but they trust David and I enough that if we say you can do this, that this is a future step for you. That's one different step than you took than your parents did, or one different step that you took than anybody else that you know. Then that gives them a different future. So that's part of what we also do, is recapture the kids who are traditionally not seen. They're kind of invisible.
And so another thing too, especially for our seniors, we begin to have that, like she was saying, we have that conversation with them, even so we recapture those that are out of school, but those that are even in school, especially the unaccompanied students, almost all of them have at least one job. out of necessity. So, and many times so our whole job is removing barriers to them coming to school and graduating. That's in a nutshell, that's what we do. So we have to get real creative sometimes to do that. And sometimes the traditional brick and mortar school is not the most appropriate place for them, so we have to, sometimes talk to them, and we talk about other school options. And there are a few other options that most people don't know about, that we know about, that we can help them with. And so we sit down and talk to them about those kinds of things. A lot of them aren't even aware. So once we begin to say, listen, so if you are unaccompanied, then when you do your financial aid application, you are marked independent, which pretty much makes college to be free, because they're not going to look at your parents' income, so you're going to get 100% of your Pell Grant. So that's a game changer, for them. And so a lot of times they don't even know what. When you begin to say, well, what would you like to do? And they're like, well, I don't really know what's available. So we take them to Haney, let them see what's out there. Sometimes, put them in contact with people here at Gulf Coast. Bring them here if we need to, and just help them to explore, a whole nother range of possibilities after graduation that they didn't think was possible.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank Ryan for inviting us. Anytime we get an opportunity to discuss services and issues that's going on in the community and connect with other agencies, it's a win-win for all of us. So thank you. I would just like to start off by just reading the definition of domestic violence, so we all can be familiar with what it is. So domestic violence is a pattern of controlling behaviors in a relationship used to gain or maintain power and control over an intimate partner. This may include physical, emotional, sexual, economic, or psychological abuse. So some of the things we do, we provide 24-hour crisis hotline, emergency safe shelter, victim advocacy, and I should mention everything we do is confidential and it's free. Okay, so I think that needs to be put out there. We have individual and group counseling, information and referral about various resources in the community, whether it's housing, employment, financial resources, all types of resources, rural outreach. So let me kind of talk about the counties we serve. We serve Bay, Calhoun, Gulf, Jackson, Washington, and I always seem to forget. Did I say Jackson? Okay, so it's 6. Bay, Calhoun, Gulf, Washington, Jackson, Holmes. Okay, so we serve 6 counties. The 14th Judicial Circuit. We offer primary prevention programming, and what that is, we try to go into schools, the boys club, girls club, and offer primary prevention. And what that's working with youth in regards to healthy relationships. We're trying to break that cycle. Okay, so that's a great program, and we have a great child advocate, youth advocate for that offers that service. So we offer community education and awareness also, professional training. So if your agency needed training, you can reach out to us and we can provide that training to you, okay? So speakers are available for civic and service organizations, church ministries. We work across the board. One thing I'd like to just hit on, because we are talking about homelessness, just because you're homeless doesn't mean you can't receive our services, because domestic violence is across the board. It doesn't discriminate in regards to your financial status. So yes, if you're homeless in your relationship that has DV in it, please reach out to us, because we are available, and once again, our services are confidential and they're free.
All right, thank you. So if there's nothing else that you would like to talk about, we can open this up to a Q&A. So does anybody have any questions? And I can bring the mic over for those who have questions.
Why is there no homeless shelter in a 3-county radius?
Isn't that a wonderful question?
I'm a homeless student here. I've been homeless since January. I live in a tent in the woods. I don't have a job. I can't find a job. I broke my back in 4 places, and now I have cancer, and nobody will fucking hire me. So what's your advice for me?
How old are you?
I'm 26. I've been in college for 10 years.
Okay. So, with a disability,
And I can't get disability because they say I'm too young and I haven't paid enough into the system. And I've spoken to 3 different lawyers, including Proctor & Cole in Tallahassee, and no one will represent me for that claim.
Have you been involved with vocational rehab
Not eligible.
for VR?
I'm just telling you what they told me. I was in foster care until I turned 18 because my parents left me in Florida.
Did they not do extended foster care?
That didn't exist yet.
Okay.
And I was too old to be grandfathered into it.
So,
I'm gonna ask you some hard questions. I've been living it.
we deal with the high school kids.
I'm feeding a homeless high schooler right now as a homeless college student. Tell me why I have to be responsible for that.
You don't.
Well,
Does the
the
high
system's
school-
not helping them.
But the high school, here's the thing. We only know about the kids who will report that they're homeless. A lot of the kids don't, for one reason or another. We can't help what we don't know.
Oh, I don't want to get my parents in trouble, blah, blah, blah. That's one of the
Parents
situations.
don't get in trouble.
They should.
Well, that's a legal thing. That's
And then
not
when they
ours.
report it to DCF and nothing's done about it, and the cops say, oh, save your sob story for someone else. Where is the empathy in the community?
First, you got to get them to believe that it exists. And second, doing things like this allows us to let them know that there are needs. There are needs that exist that aren't being covered.
Most definitely.
So they have not set in place the stuff that's going to put in motion the agencies who are going to step up for those shelters. We deal with homeless kids all the time. There's no place for them to go.
So I'll ask the Salvation Army a question. How come you guys don't have a grant writer?
Oh, well, we do have a grant writer. In regards to Salvation Army, our officers kind of work on the programs that they want to focus on in the community. So domestic violence has been a program that they identified. It's been around for 20 years. Now, we do have a transitional housing program, but it's built around families. I would definitely bring your concerns back to our majors because I think there is a need in the community for, homelessness.
So another thing that I ran into is I've had Doorways of Northwest Florida and Catholic Charities tell me that, oh, we'll pay you deposit and first month's rent so you can get into an apartment, provided you give us 12 months of pay stubs and show us you're working. And I'm like, well, I can't get a job. Not only that, but every apartment complex that I've called has either been full with no vacancy or tells me that you have to pass a credit check to be approved for the application. Well, if I got divorced 7 years ago and my credit's a 500, I can't pass that credit check. So it's keeping me in being homeless. And, I feel like that needs to be addressed as well, that these apartment complexes are discriminating against people on an economic basis and nothing's being done about it. I'm writing a bill. I'm actually writing 2 bills for Griffiths. One's a juvenile justice reform bill, and the other one is to create a program to house homeless college students. So I'm not one of these people that just sits in the woods and doesn't do anything and smokes cigarettes all day. That's not who I am.
And I think you make some valid points. I think we may need to start, with commission meetings. I mean, you've expressed yourself well. Have you been able to attend any, Bay County Commission meetings, Panama City? Because I think they need to hear this, from somebody that, is very serious about their situation.
I know the Lead Coalition and St. Andrew's Episcopal Church are having meetings with the commissioners. I'm not aware of when these meetings are. I don't know when the next one is, but I know they've addressed the police harassing the homeless people. They've addressed all of the businesses downtown, putting up no loitering signs just to give the police the right to mess with the homeless. Because people are getting arrested for falling asleep on a bench. And it's happening like every day, and I hear about it. And there's a lot of homeless people here, and I know a lot of them because I've been homeless for a year. And I see them at McDonald's using the Wi-Fi. I see them at the church getting food. and then nothing's being done. Just yesterday, I saw the cops slam a woman on her face in the Piggly Wiggly parking lot. And I called the supervisor. I said, hey, these police are being violent out here for no reason. This woman was sitting up against her car, and they grabbed her and put her on her neck. What you gonna do about it? Oh, we'll send a supervisor out here. Supervisor comes out. Oh, we'll review the report. I just reported police brutality to you, and you're not doing anything about it. And these are the issues that we have in this community here in Panama City. And nothing's being done about it because people just don't care anymore.
Well, so like the gentleman was saying, you bring up some valid points, but a lot of these things are kind of beyond our realm of, expertise or influence. So, I would just encourage you to continue to take it to like the civic leaders and things like that. But like Sue was saying, for us, so we kind of focus on that niche of the high schoolers, and that's our grant funding that we have that operates, that runs our program and gives us money to help to, the high schoolers is specific to that population. So there again, I would encourage any of the kids, that are, if you're unaccompanied, if you're not living with a parent, legal guardian, please give us a chance, and there's no, we offer services. We're not the truant officer. We do speak to attendance issues a lot of times, and that's one of the issues that's prevalent with the kids that, a lot of times the kids that we work with. So we try to help address that, but we're just there to offer services to help the kids to ultimately graduate. So if there's those kids out there that meet this criteria, please, let us know. And give us a chance to help you any way that we can. If nothing more, there's some of the kids that the only thing that they need or that they take advantage of is just by virtue of them being in that homeless status, they get the option for school and they get the money for school. And there's a few, there's been some kids that's all that they need. But that's not the majority of them. Most of them need a lot more than that.
I just raise these concerns to make you guys aware of some of the things that I'm dealing with. And I'm not the only one in this situation. I'm certainly not the only homeless student at this institution.
Sure.
And there's nothing in place for the transition. There's nothing in place from high school to college. There's nothing.
I feel like that needs to be addressed too, and maybe we can collaborate, and I can talk to your grant writer, and we can draft my bill that I'm trying to write together. And I feel like we should have these programs because Massachusetts has one, Oregon has one, California has one, Washington, D.C. has one. They have programs like this in schools in South Florida, but we don't have one here. Why is that?
Yeah, and he makes a good point, because the sooner we tackle this problem, the better, because the biggest problem with homelessness is, at least from what I can see, now I'm not homeless, so obviously my experience is a little different, is instability, It's really hard to, do what you have to do when you have to look over your shoulder worrying about where you're going to sleep or where you're going to eat. School, for some of these kids, is the last thing they're thinking of, because all they see is, oh, now I have to go and find a way to get to school. I got to get books. I got to do all this. So
David and I get very involved in the community for our population, for the high school group. We have 3 committees running now to try to build housing in our area, but it'll be strictly for the high school population. Again, there's nothing to transition for them. So we're trying to add that into it, but we get involved with people who have the money, who'll spend the money to do that population, because you're going to look at liability, that's always an issue. You're going to look at supervision, that's always the second issue. So we have already met with several people this year who are willing to make that commitment going forward and have grant writers and people involved to do that. Because stability, without the stability, school is secondary. Yeah. Without food, school is secondary.
Without water, medical supplies, hygiene, it's all secondary.
Having to work to pay for those items instead of going to school is oftentimes part of the problem as well.
Well, we could give those items to high school kids. We just have to know they exist. And when they become embarrassed or when they're not willing to be open, we're very clear by saying we're not the cops, we're not DCF. Our job is to help you finish, whatever that means, whether you need hygiene products, whether you need food, whatever it is that you need. I can't tell you the number of tents I bought kids because there's nothing in Bay County. There's nowhere.
Another issue too is like, as you said, yeah, you may not be cops or DCF and stuff like that, but for people that's like been homeless for a long time, has transitioned a lot, you know, corruption's a huge problem too. You know, a lot of shelters up in New York, they got in trouble for, you know, pocketing the money, or those shelters aren't, you know, substandard and all that. And that's a big problem because people have a hard time trusting people, because when you're in that situation, you know, oftentimes it's every man for themselves.
There's no oversight, there's no regulation, there's nothing.
At least that's what I'm guessing at, mind you. So that's a big problem that needs to be addressed too. And especially if you're going to be a young kid that doesn't have, you know, either parent. I mean, that's hard. It's very hard to, I can't imagine how hard it'd be to ask for help in that situation.
Well, one of the things that we've really endeavored to do this year and last year is to cultivate community partners that will come alongside of us and help and get a vision for what we're doing, because a lot of people in the community want to help, but they don't know how to help. And they don't really know, you know, what are the needs. And so, you know, there's a gazillion things you could get involved with, but, you know, just we continue to get asked by civic organizations, by churches, to come and talk to them and let them know what we're doing. And these folks are beginning to partner with us. And we went to a conference last year in, I think it was Orlando, and the one main takeaway that I got from the conference, this one organization was talking about all the things that they had done, but they had like 27 sponsors, community partners. And so I thought to myself, we really need to step up that game in bringing the community partners together to help us in this endeavor, because we just can't do it by ourselves, and we have some grant money, but beyond that helps these folks to make community relationships, community, you know, to meet other folks in the community that can help them. So I just think that's really an important piece that we are focusing on this year.
Father Ryan, the Episcopal Church in St. Andrews is the only church in town that feeds people. Now, it's a group of 5 churches. It's 2 of the Catholic churches, 2 of the Episcopal churches, and I believe it's a Lutheran church. And they all pool together on the money, and they all pool together on the volunteers, and they put on a dinner every Thursday night. One night a week, one meal. And that's the only time I eat hot food usually in a week.
Okay, so to that comment, Salvation Army will feed you. That's part of their mission, is feeding you. If you want to get with me after the event, I can give you my card and there's an address on there, and you can definitely come up and we'll make sure you get some food and also clothing. So there's services out there for, the homeless. Now it's about getting out there, making sure they know what's out there. So I encourage you, if you're able, to definitely stop by the Salvation Army so we can kind of, talk. I introduce you to our social service director. Her name is Shay Wells. And maybe you can give her some feedback on what your situation is and, some of your ideas in regards to homelessness in the community. So I'll definitely give you my card.
All right, do we have any other questions?
I just had a program-specific question. You all, when a senior is applicable to your program that is homeless, what happens when that senior graduates?
That's the transition part that we don't have. David and I never drop our kids. We've got kids, I've got kids who've made it through school 4 years later. We've got kids who have kids now. But because there's not a transition program, we know that they don't always have the answers on how to get to the next place. So we really spend a whole bunch of time of trying, whether it's budgeting, whether it's decision making, whatever that is, we don't drop them. We can't. Not in good faith, not in good conscience, we can't drop them.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I was going to say that technically our you know, our program obligation would end at graduation, but I can't, you know, I've been with this kid for 3-4 years and I developed a relationship with him, and so, well, you graduated now, and so have a good life, see you, you know.
If you get a senior, let's say December, you know, and graduation is rolling around in May, and you all find them housing, I'm not sure how that works or whatever, but upon graduation, would that senior, you know, essentially have to leave that housing? That's the specifics.
There is no housing.
No housing.
There is no housing for that population. None. What we have at Anchorage is 12 beds. Of those 12 beds, 6 belong to pregnant females. And there are rules and guidelines for those kids there. That means 3 beds for boys, 3 beds for girls. Can they stay till their 23rd birthday? Yes, they can, as long as they follow the dictate of that agency. But that's all there is in Panama City. So anything else we do is either at the grace and mercy of others in trying to help house them. I got 3 of them in the housing across the street because they came here in August. So that part of it, yes, that part of it's the hard part that David and I are continually working on with the community partners on building that, because of the liability, because of all of the legal stuff that comes when anybody's under 18. You know, so we've got people to buy in this year.
Are you talking about Anchorage over on Elizabeth?
Mm-hmm.
Nope, that's Heidel House.
Where are you?
Heidel, I'm talking about TOP on Transmitter. Yes.
I got you.
And they're supposed to move over to Lisenby at some point when they get done being built. But they have specific, they have specific rules that you have to follow. Some of those are a real struggle when you've been grown since you were 12, and now somebody's trying to say you have to report in and you have to do this. It's really sometimes that simple, is that structure is uncomfortable. And with that uncomfortability, they easily get kicked out. So the number of phone calls we get over the weekends and on Fridays of, I got nowhere to go, that's why I said when I buy tents, because there is nothing set up.
I used to work in place with Big Ben, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
So you get agencies like Big Ben, you get agencies like Anchorage, and unless they see this as a need and then appropriate the money accordingly, and then structure it where it be successful,
So,
that's all where our values are.
I could speak to personal experience from that because I was in foster care, and I was raising my little brother from the time he was born when I was like 4 or 5 years old, so I quickly became an adult before I was 10. And then to come back and to have other adults telling me what to do is disrespectful to me, in my opinion, coming from my perspective. So, and you know, nobody really realizes that no, I've been studying endocrinology because I can't find an endocrinologist. You know what I mean?
I do.
And then I go to their office and I talk to them, and it makes me look like a because I know more than they do, because I'm concerned about my health. You know what I mean? And these are all these issues, but the last thing I was going to say was one of the commissioners brought up in one of the meetings, I watched the meeting, and they had this idea that they could put homeless students, high school or college, in foreclosed houses and set up a deal with the city or the state government. I'm not sure. But how is your program funded? How does that work? How would we fund such a program? Could we instate it?
So that's not going to be funded through the school district. That's going to be funded from some other agency, some other corporation that comes in.
So where does the school district get the funding for y'all's program?
From the homeless education. Our whole funding comes from, can I get you educated? Is this educationally relevant? Where can I get you educated? That's where our funding comes from. That's why we keep reaching out to other community partners to get that other hook in there on, this is beyond education. Without this, education's not the priority. So that's where we are when David talks about networking, trying to really convince people in the area And I say convince them that this is a problem, because they are surprised that we have a homeless population, and oh my gosh, they're high school kids.
Probably bordering in the hundreds.
Oh, yeah.
Thousands.
Yeah.
I know for adults, it's got to be in the thousands because I ride the trolley home every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we have tons of them. Like half the people that ride the bus are homeless, on assistance. You know, they don't got a house, they live in a tent. You know,
Maybe it's time we put together our own coalition and hold our own meetings and invite the county commissioners and the city council and whoever else we need to invite, like Griff Griffiths. I'll get in his email. I'll call Jay Trumbull. I'll go down to his office today.
I think that's what today is for. That's
Well,
Yeah.
scale. And then, when we have those ideas, we can foster them and then present them to a larger population.
And I was going to suggest to you, sir, when you said like they have these programs in, I can't remember, you named a couple places.
Massachusetts and Oregon
So
and-
reach out to them and see what they did.
Who funds them?
Right. So look at several successful programs
They're
that
funded through state grant-funded
Yeah.
programs.
Well, but they had to do something initially. Somebody had to do something to get the ball rolling. And what did they do? And you know how, if you can uncover those things, that would be, you know, I'm a big proponent of not reinventing the wheel. So
Pretty much exactly what I'm trying to do here is they wrote a bill and then got the bill funded through a grant and then applied and allocated that funding to this new program that they created.
well, maybe you're on the right track. Unfortunately, it's not fast, you know, but you just takes people at the grassroots level that continue and don't give up.
The last bill that I got passed, I waited 5 years for it to pass. I'll do it again.
well, in the vein of that, lieu of that, in y'all's experience, what is the root cause of for homelessness in the high school population?
Their parents,
The parents. That's what I figured.
addicts, death, incarceration. It's their parents. They wouldn't be in that situation if their parents hadn't made whatever decision that occurred in. And after Hurricane Michael, the boys were the most disposable. The boys were the ones the parents left behind. The boys were the ones they felt could fend for themselves and do on their own.
Because that's what is expected of us, generally speaking.
And boys are usually less receptive to reaching out for help. You know, girls are quicker to reach out for help. Boys are more, you know, it's just kind of how we're raised. You know, I can handle this, you know, suck it up, do it, you know, exactly. And so, you know, a lot of times the guys are much less inclined to reach out for help.
And that's also true for domestic violence. I mean, that applies to domestic violence. What you see is, more men hold it in and won't reach out for help, okay? Because it happens with men also. It's not just exclusive to women, okay? So you see that, so.
You know, we're expected to just hold it in or, you know, deal with it, kind of thing. That's always been that perception because, you know, we're supposed to be a tough one, so, you know, it's frowned upon if we ask for help.
And that's a stereotype we need to get away from. That's definitely a stereotype we need to get away from.
You know, if you're a big guy, why are you letting yourself being abused by some girl that's like 4'2" or something, you know?
And the size has nothing
To do with it. No,
But
it doesn't,
Those are
but
great points.
that's a stereotype.
Yep.
But
There's a reason they say man up.
When people do report things, the cops don't do anything. And I'm living evidence of this. There's a scar on the side of my face where my dad hit me in the face with a rifle when I was a kid. And 12 different people reported my abuse to DCF, and DCF didn't ever do jack. This is an issue. This is a legitimate concern, and it's not just me. And this needs to be addressed. And I need help from people like you guys, because they won't listen to me by myself. But they'll listen to 100 of us if we get in a room together. And we say, hey, we're going to pull your funding. You play with their money, they get mad. That's how you get their attention.
Yeah, we agree.
So I had a question about the rate of homelessness. It was pretty bad after Hurricane Michael, really bad. I was wondering if it has gotten better, has it increased, has it decreased?
With the here's the thing with the high school kids. Because this Michael has been so far out, COVID has been so far out, they no longer necessarily consider themselves homeless. So the reporting was a lot better after Michael because it made sense to everybody. We still have kids who are living in substandard housing, which means no roof, no electricity, no water. who do not consider themselves homeless because they're glad they got somewhere to stay, or living doubled up with people who have been kind and generous, who still also don't consider themselves homeless because now it's been a couple years. Now I've had to stay a couple years. So that's, the reporting is lower, but that's why it's lower.
The unfortunate reality is I would argue that it's actually higher now. Now, again, reporting that's a bit complicated and that messes up the numbers. And what I say is, again, mostly anecdotal, but I would say it's probably higher, largely due, at least especially for the past high school population, because of substandard housing. You know, a lot of places still getting rebuilt. Like you said, all the apartment complexes having all these rules and extra regulations that seem to discriminate against them. COVID, you know, all sorts of issues. So I would say it's actually higher. And I got a second question. Based on what y'all are doing and what you guys know anyway, what would be the next step for y'all? You know, what do y'all want to do going forward? Like, what's
Housing and a transitional opportunity, somebody in place to help them get from high school to adultness. And I don't mean that in, gee, you're 18, welcome to being an adult. I mean, and this is how you budget your money. This is what finances look like. This is where you have to, the number of kids that we have who fall back into having babies because perhaps the conversations haven't been addressed differently. The transition part of that piece, they didn't have, you take into consideration some of these kids have been homeless, and it's getting, the reported ones are getting younger. So David and I are running into 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. What used to be 16, 17, 18, but now they're younger. And they didn't necessarily have all the conversations that other people's parents did on procreation and recreating children and or budgeting and money and all of that stuff. So they don't have that knowledge. So that's a part of where David and I come along, and we have those we have that conversation with them. The hard conversations that need to happen.
So you guys mentioned the Seminole landing. I'll hold it.
I don't need that, Professor. I think my voice carries. There's two things. I'm a sub-teacher with Bay District, so I heard 2 or 3 different things. I heard the homelessness on this young man's side, which is, it's just hurt my heart. It really does. Domestic violence. We've given to domestic violence. We do. My church does. We've done that. My question is, though, even with the students, when I last taught before coming back as a returning student to go to school, I'm going back to sub-teaching. I've been doing that with Bay District about 13, 14 years. I just don't want to teach full time. However, I just have a question. There was one student too, like you, under your care, under your program for the homeless with the students, a senior and a junior. They were sisters. You would never know that they were homeless. They came to school every day. They were smart, and they lived in one of the tents in one of our communities. And we got involved. I got involved with them through one of their teachers. So I'm getting to that point right there. So they went on, got them educated, smart. They went on transition from, they both graduated. One went to Morehouse, and the other one, I can't remember where she, but they both went, stayed on the honor roll for the whole time. They had that determination, what I hear from him, they had that, although you're going through, but they're determined. So my point is, with the school board, and I'll get with, even with our representatives in the community, this is a very prosperous area. Bay District is, Bay County, all the other surrounding counties, you come together. So I look at homes on the beach, just an example, being built all the time. I was out there this weekend, I just count so many. So what he was saying, and my question is, then on the housing part, and housing is hard, and I remember when I grew up back in South Carolina, it was different, but it was hard. They do go by all these different stipulations. So why do not, when y'all have your meetings, or when the board meets, that would be a good time for you to come down to the board, when the Bay District Board meets. Those, I know you have your areas for the schools, but you're seeing them transition. So have y'all ever had any type of meetings with the board, with the school board first, and then to say, okay, these students are transitioning, they're young adults. How can we still assist them? Or the representatives, have you ever talked to the representatives within, we have I work with the League Coalition, you have different coalitions that are working, but it's not enough. And the homelessness among young people within, I've listened to your stats, it's just it just blows my mind. The new one that just opened, Fox, apartments off of 15th Street in that area, of Martin Luther King. So we work with 2 or 3 students, like you were saying, that were living in the abandoned housing. The mama was living right across, but she wanted to do her thing. She had 7 kids, so these young men were taking care of the siblings. We worked with them to get them out. They came, they didn't have water, they didn't have anything. They just lived in the abandoned because it was still abandoned. But my thing is, with here, the rescue mission, we used to give to them faithfully on Business 98. You have 2 now. You have one just for the women, Bethel Village, I think. The men doesn't have any. They don't have any place. Like you were saying, where do they go? So I asked, at my church, which we are rebuilding, but we're still trying to get active. I'm just sitting here on pen and okay, this is all I'm doing, my paper for my philosophy class, and it's on homeless. But it just hurts my heart. So all of those people, men, young men, your age, come they stay in our backyard at the church. We try to help, but I'm saying we're trying, my pastor's trying to say, well, what has happened to the rescue mission? There is no service. We used to be up there frequently. There is no service whatsoever. Domestic violence, you work for Salvation Army or domestic violence?
Salvation Army.
They're doing well. Y'all are really doing. But for this type, for his concern, being homeless that long, living in a tent that long, and he's exhorted, even with the teachers here, even with your professors. I don't know if you ever talked to them. There should be something that they could, Gulf Coast. It should be something, not to you all, but you work with students, that could help. How many students that are coming to college that are homeless? Not to get to the adults that live over in, I go behind Walmart a lot. If you go behind there outside, like you were saying, there are a lot for a lot of them, not just because they don't want to be homeless, but because there is no home for whatever the incident was, like the family, whatever. We have a lot of that, and it just hurts my heart. Even at Gulf Coast, you need to talk with someone, because someone here, you have with the Bay District School to help the students there, so there should be something for college level. You get some assistance, but it should be something for college level to help. And I commend you all, because you all are doing wonderful, but it's just overwhelming, just in this area. I'm not from Panama City, but it's just in this area, how many young people, and then you get to the domestic violence part, with the younger people, the young ones, that gets me. You have a lot of young people. I've seen that. I had to intervene with my personality. One young man I don't do that. So he didn't want me to really get involved, but I did. I could have gotten hurt, but I did. You just don't do it. You have a lot of that among young people.
You do. Yes, ma'am.
So what is the solution?
So
I know you gave good ones. What do you think?
one of my ideas, and I just wanted to speak into the numbers. So last week at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, they brought fried chicken for dinner. This lady donated her time and money and went to the store and filled up her entire back seat of her Volkswagen with fried chicken. And then after 30 minutes, it was all gone. Gone. Up in a flash. And then last year, when my living situation was kind of faltering, I went over and talked to Seminole Landing. I'm thinking, oh, you know, they put this apartment complex in next to 2 different colleges, you know, they might make a deal with me and use my financial aid to help me get an apartment. Nope. It's owned by a private investor. It's a private apartment complex. They only allow college students to live there, but they won't let you use your financial aid. They wanted to check my credit, and since I don't have a guarantor or a co-signer, they told me it was $4,800 to move in. I said my entire financial aid package was $3,600. So how do you expect me to pay that? That's one of the issues. We have this apartment complex here, and there are vacant units in that building across the street. And there are homeless students going to school here, and that private investor doesn't give a f about us. And whoever allowed them to build that building and run that project over there needs to be held accountable for that.
Not even just that. Even the people living there are struggling too because the cost of living in those apartments are expensive. And it's already bad enough with inflation and rise cost of living. Like, I don't even know how, like, and some of these people are like 4 people to a unit and they're still struggling to pay. And they go here.
Sharing a bedroom over there.
Yeah. And some people in there are having to like get their friends to live there because their friends are homeless and they can't go anywhere. And they can't get an apartment there, as you said, because of that. And because it's just so expensive to live there. It's like, it's almost untenable.
So I feel like we should create a program, an alias with these owners of these apartment complexes, and maybe talk to Representative Trumbull, and that's going to become Representative Griffiths, and get something going, and put our own coalition together and have a large meeting. I don't care if we have to have it upstairs in the ATC building. We can get permission for that.
That's good.
That might be a possibility.
That's a good start, yeah.
But as I'm sitting here listening to everything that you're saying, I think you got a lot going on. And first and foremost, as an academic advisor, if you got all that going on, it might not be the best time for you to go to school right now.
Right.
To be,
I'm gonna finish regardless.
Let's be clear and let's be concise. You got a lot going on, and I love seeing you here. But if everything you have going on exceeds what you can manage and what you can do, then the logical, decision would be to let me put this down and take care of myself as an individual first. I love the idea of going to board meetings and introducing all these individuals. However, is that a real fix to the problem?
It can become one if we make it.
But is it a real fix to the problem?
We'll see.
I think if we can help you as an individual out, you're not in this room having this conversation.
But it's not about me, it's about all of us.
But everything you're saying is about you.
But I'm not the only one in this situation. I'm just an example. I'm just an American citizen.
True enough. And I'm just an academic advisor. I came in to listen and see how I could come in and contribute. But I do have to kind of move myself and shift myself over to the panel, because everything I'm hearing, you say my experience is me. Okay, well, these are problems that you yourself are having. They can help high school seniors. They have parameters that they can work with. Yes, they have money, similar to my program. But just because I have money, that doesn't mean I can go spend my money on food. I can't just go buy things for students. I just can't. I have to follow those parameters. And I think you're kind of stepping away from those parameters and you're trying to change them, as opposed to, playing within the lines. And if this program isn't suitable, okay, cool. There's another program out there. We just have to go find it first.
Why not create one?
Or we can create it.
That's what I'm talking about.
But now we're reinventing the wheel, or we're trying to create something from the ground up.
I don't have a problem with writing the legislation. So I was wrongfully incarcerated as a juvenile, and I did 3.5 years wrongfully convicted. And I'm going to speak to more of that experience. There exists no pardoning process in the state of Florida for juvenile records. I've been through the governor's office 3 times. Guess what I'm doing? I wrote a juvenile justice reform bill and created that process by myself, drunk in a bar one night. I get bored with the system.
Could I make a comment? And want to introduce myself. I am the academic and career coach here at Gulf Coast College. And yes. My name is Janika Peace. I'm the Gulf Coast Community, Gulf Coast Academic, the title is so long, Academic and Career Coach, and I just became the community partner to represent Parker Elementary School as well with the college. So community work is what I do. I just relocated from Delaware, and I came here to rebuild Florida, and they were not giving back to the community. So I decided everything boils down to education and came back into higher education. Your mental health is very important. First thing first. When you've been through so much trauma, your mental health, everything I seen here didn't take long to see. Coming from up north, this is a small place. Devastation. All I did was spend a couple nights in my car because I came here trying to help people for housing, and they didn't even have nowhere to put me. And then when they found somewhere to put me, where disaster workers were coming from different states to help out, there were people that have been living in these hotels and motels, families, okay? They offered me housing, and I told them to give it to a family. It's a system, it's politics. You have to understand what goes into nonprofits, okay? How we allocate funds. But your mental, I cannot stress this enough, and this is for everybody in the room. When your mental is not right, nothing is right. It breaks down you mentally, physically, by everything. There's anger. There's anger.
That's why I'm gonna go to law school.
That's all good, but understand this, your mental comes first. I already told you, you talk to me a lot.
Sometimes you're forced to put that as a secondary thing too.
You don't put that, and this is what I'm telling you right now, you don't put that as a secondary thing. I'm here I came to Panama City, not just to help, but because of my mental, because my family was driving me nuts. We don't even want to talk about that right now, okay? So, your mental is the most important thing. If this is not right, nothing else is going to be right.
Sometimes the best way to help someone is to help yourself. It's like, going on an airplane is an emergency, you gotta put your thing on first before you can put someone else. Otherwise, you both could get,
You can help, and you got great ideas, but you have to help yourself first. You have to be open to want to help yourself first, to get everything that has hurt you.
To drive it on in.
And to take all that pain to help others. You saying you want to help others, but you got to help yourself first.
In the situation I'm in now, if I came from having my hair pulled and my face put through pieces of drywall, living on an air mattress in a tent ain't shit to me right now.
But you need healing.
You
need healing. It's no other way around it. It's not out of your hands. You have to want to be open to this. For anyone to work with you,
I'll never get a secret security clearance for the rest of my life.
That's
the field that I'm trying to go into, so I've been forced to put it on a back burner, or else I'm my career.
I tell you every time you're about to be something amazing in this world, but you must fix this first. You have to be open to that help. Not every psychologist or counselor is out to get you.
It's not about
It's
that.
people, but you have to be open to get the help.
Government will never trust me
Let's
enough to
forget
work
all
on a
that.
computer
Let's
system.
forget all that.
I
We
can't.
have time for one more question. I think you had a question.
There you go.
So coming back to you guys, how do you gather your database of students that need help, and how do you connect with them, especially with the amount of children that are going missing out of the foster care system?
It starts most of the time in the beginning. So understand our system in education. At the beginning, at the end of every fiscal year, our slate is wiped clean. So whoever we were dealing with last year, we may not be dealing with this year unless we get them recognized again. So David and I try to keep up with who we were dealing with so we can re-round on them and see if they're still in that situation or has their situation improved. We have to legally, with all the rules that we follow, mark them in the education system as homeless and unaccompanied. At that point, we can intercede in anything that they need. Usually we will hear more about the kids from other kids than we do anybody else. So that is how, so just think that we start at 0 in August, and anything we get from there, it is either coming from the school district, it's coming from another adult, and from that it branches out to, once we see one kid, we may find 5 others.
And just to piggyback off of what Sue said, so in the beginning of the school year, every student that's enrolled in Bay District schools gets a student housing questionnaire. Their parents do, or whoever they're living with. And so that's where we get a lot of our information from. And then from there, we know who we had years prior. So then when we don't get one on them, we're calling, hey, you know, what's your situation this year? A lot of times it does improve, which that's what we want. But that's how it initially gets started every August.
But we just get out there into the schools as much as possible and into the community, and like here, anywhere, if we get a name from anybody. So we talk to the counselors, we talk to the mental health people, talk to teachers as much as possible. Just anyone at the school level, anyone here in the civic organizations, whenever we get a name, someone says, hey, I think this kid might be, that goes to Bay or wherever else it is, then we'll go meet with that kid and find out what their living situation is and go from there.
But to your foster care question, we have a social worker who's our foster care liaison, and that's her job, is to keep up with all the Bay County students who are in foster care.
So y'all do have a foster care liaison with your organization. Okay, that's great. That's what I wanted to know.
Is it Children's Home Society that runs it here? Is it Families First Network? Is it, who's the organization that runs foster care here?
We're not running foster care.
We're not running. We just
We
have a
are
liaison.
touch the kids.
The health care of Northwest Florida. That big being changed the name.
Yeah.
How many are you all funded to serve? Or how many will your grant allow you to?
Okay, you'll understand this. Our grant money is dependent on 2 years ago's kids.
Okay, I got you. We can change that.
So,
We can write a bill.
so whatever we received funding-wise this year came from kids that got marked last year. That's why that's super important to us, because in order to keep people in place, you have to have the need.
Yeah.
Without the need, people go away.
Okay, we've come to the end of our talk. Let's thank our speakers for talking about these really important issues. I think we've seen that a lot needs to be done here in Bay County to address these issues. We've recorded this. This is going to go up on YouTube. I'm going to send out a link to the recording just campus-wide for everyone. If for whatever reason you don't get the link or you're not on that listserv, email me and I can send you the link to that YouTube video. All right, thank you.